So, hey Jacob, how's it going, buddy?
Hey
How's your
man,
day?
good to be here. I started my 5 a.m. club, so this is hour six, and it's crazy. I've just got so much more energy waking up early. It's kind of addicting.
Yeah, I love the early crew. I can't always get on it, but when I do, I always seem like I get a lot better results out of the day.
Get stuff done. It's fun.
It's also easier for me to avoid the rain when it does happen.
Oh really? Time
Yeah, it
time works out.
typically doesn't rain in the mornings usually, so.
Very cool.
So, Jacob, I asked you to come join us today because I'm getting excited about this upcoming tech panel. And for me, we did one I think it was back in November, and it went off
hmm
really well. It was on networking.
hmm
And we just enjoyed it so much, we wanted to branch out, get some more topics going. And so we thought we'd invite you on to chat about virtualization. You getting excited?
Oh yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to it because we live in a world that is pretty much defined at this point by virtualization, whether you know it or not, right? All the stuff that's happening in the cloud, in your data center, even when you're just like doing development in a small scale environment, it's all some sort of virtualization. Nothing is real. It's all an illusion. It's all an alias. We're all one step removed from reality. The matrix is here, my friend.
Well, that's interesting to hear you say that. To say you might not know about it. Can you give us some examples of where virtualization is happening and we might not realize it?
Well, one of the things that virtualization happens at a lot of different levels. So, for example, talking about networking, a lot of the devices that are providing layer two switching, layer three routing, load balancers, VPN endpoints, all of that are actually virtual machines providing that functionality. It's not necessarily a chassis with a bunch of ports coming out of it. It's actually a part of that data center server. Now, it's still going to connect to something physical eventually, but the cool thing is when you've got virtual workloads connecting to other virtual workloads, when you put a virtual connector in between them, it simplifies a lot of the networking. And sometimes that means that the network admins don't even have to worry about trying to finagle physical infrastructure. They just have to have big fat pipelines in place, and all the details can be done in the virtual world. I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you think about things like network encapsulation. That's an interesting idea. Just stuffing stuff inside of it, so it suddenly becomes like transit. Was it transit agnostic? Then you can just let
Right. Yeah,
the
like yeah,
network
you
move it.
throw it into a VX LAN and you're just good to go. It's like working with VPN tunnels, only instead of it reducing performance, it actually improves performance because it gives us the ability to have our protocols not have to go through a lot of high level thinking, right? Everything can act as though it was all happily together in the same local area network, but it's an illusion, right? You can have a hybrid situation where some of it's actually in your physical data center, some of it's actually housed up in the cloud, and it's transparent. It just blows my mind.
Well, and you think about interesting network services like DNS. That's a great example of abstraction. The whole idea that I don't want to remember a MAC address. Whew, let's think about IPs. Well, hold
Right.
on, I don't want to remember that either. How about we use a DNS name instead? um, but those conventions enable a lot of what I like to think of as trickery. It really is a sleight of hand that we can do across a lot of these services to change what people see while keeping the back end dynamic. And I think
hmm
that's really empowering, and it's one of the things that drives cloud computing in a big way for sure. And you
hmm
probably heard me talk about it, but I consider virtualization one of the core technologies that has made what we think of as cloud possible to these days. So
hmm
I think it's super critical that people get a chance to really dig into virtualization. And I got to admit, I think I boil it down, and maybe I don't consider its importance as much these days because I've been around it so long,
Yeah.
and trying to dig back through it and say, well, where would I start? How would I get into it?
hmm
It's hard for me to put myself back in the learner's original place. Do you ever struggle with that?
It is something where, yeah, as we add one more layer and another layer of complexity on top of it all, going back to, right. So it all starts with a hypervisor, and it all starts with these files that support virtual machines and the real basics of it. And in the study group that I've actually been doing in vSphere, it's been nice actually because to get a chance to talk through those things, and it's interesting the questions that come back because sometimes it'll be somebody kind of asking this high level question because he's been dealing with it for years, and then somebody else says, right, so like, what's the difference between the Vmx file and the Vhd file? I mean, what are the differences between different aspects of it? But it's I like the fact that we do. I feel like we do a pretty good job of kind of starting with the basics and pushing it forward until you're able to kind of have a platform, have a foundation to build on those heavier topics.
Absolutely, that's a great way to put it. And one thing that I think is interesting about virtualization as well is that when you learn a concept like how a hypervisor works, or
Mhm.
how local disk versus network attached storage, how those pieces work, I can
Mhm.
apply those concepts across virtualization vendors. We might use
Right.
different terminology, but
Yeah.
very much an important concept to have.
Well, yeah, I mean, the familiarity of how of understanding how a local virtualization environment works is then going to transfer. I mean, if I know if I understand, okay, so storage is abstract, right? It doesn't have to mean a little wire connected to a local disk, but that I can acquire chunks of disk from something out on my network. Well, then when you go to AWS, right, and you're talking about buckets and those kind of things where we're providing, like, yeah, the terms might be different, but the general idea of lots of storage, carve out a chunk, here's some for you. Oh, okay, I can roll with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think earlier when we were chatting a little bit, thinking about what the tech panel might include, we talked about some subjects like multi-tenancy, the idea that you can have different teams, different organizational units, different workloads, all cohabitating the same physical resources. Very,
Mhm.
very lifts a lot of limits for network design and application design, and of course, resource consumption. So there's
Yeah, it's
big
kind of
benefits.
when I think about least privilege and role based access, those kinds of like granular security concepts then apply to things like virtualization, because it's the idea of you're not just going to have a perimeter firewall and call it good anymore, right? You're going to break things down. But once you do that, it frees you because you don't have to say, "Oh, wait, what if I'm in the wrong side? I'm totally exposed. What if this person comes in? He could hack everything." No, the security concepts of working at a small scale and then automating the process of making that a repeatable process is good. And that was one of the other topics we looked at, was that idea of that we're going to be talking about is the idea of bringing in some development and some automation into the picture so that you can actually scale this.
Oh yeah, yeah. We think of orchestration, and one thing that's really important to the cloud world is the idea of self-serviceability. And
Mhm.
self-service is a cool thing. We think about it as a facade. I can push buttons and get orders, but it really is automation at work. That is it. You choose that thing, and it kicks off a series of automated processes that could
Mhm.
change your network, change your infrastructure in some way. So
Mhm.
yeah, we're going to be talking about that a lot more in the tech panel coming up as well. And so for those of you who might be watching and checking it out, remember the whole goal behind this tech panel is to make sure that you have a chance to ask questions, because we watch a lot of video training, we read a
Mhm.
lot of user guides, and this is a chance for you to get registered, send us some questions, and me and Jacob and Jeff, we're going to be answering some of those questions. So I think that's a big benefit for me. I'm not sure, Jacob, have you ever struggled with video-based training solely on its own, or just reading the manual, or
It I love the internet these days because it is fun. You can actually, like, I'll look up, like, okay, what are the pain points that people have? Look up the product and, like, just look up that word in error, or, struggle. The struggle is real. You'll find stuff. But dealing with it at different levels. A lot of times those questions that make it into the forums and things like that are often pretty high level, really detailed questions. And sometimes you peel back a layer or two and you can say, okay, here's kind of maybe a root misunderstanding. But it's easier in a live situation like what we're going to have to let the question just kind of flow naturally out of the conversation. And then we're there to just, bam, answer it right back. So that's what makes it fun for us.
oh, yeah, and a healthy, smear of banter on the side there. And we got
Yeah.
Jeff Kish is going to be joining us from our Cisco team, and he brings a ton of great networking experience to help us look at that other networking side of things, because virtualization touches all the facets, man. And I think
Mhm.
you really see it. Any of my Cisco friends who might hear about this, you're living the dev net world right now, in the world of network automation. It is all about being able to automate and being able to virtualize and work within those environments. This is a really big hireability element for anybody who's stepping into really, I think, any IT role, even supporting IT roles like people who are designing or maybe project management roles. You're going to run into these tools. It's going to benefit you to know how they work and how they fit together.
Has that rain turned into hail for you there, man? It sounds like it's literally raining cats and dogs on you.
So I get two types of rain. First, I get the nice sprinkle, and then the trees will go blap, 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 blap.
Hashtag yurt life. Yeah.
I don't know what I expected recording in a stinking tent in the woods, so.
The very best.
But, you know, guys, that's one of the big things. If you're watching the video here and checking it out, you're thinking about the tech panel, we are going to have some registration info flying across the screen. So if you're interested in coming and hanging with me and Jacob and Jeff, just a few weeks away now, we're going to be, or sorry, just 1 week away from now, we'll be having our tech panel. So make sure you find the relevant details. I'll put some links up on the screen and down in the description as well. Jacob, I really appreciate you just taking a few minutes to wrap and be excited about it. Is there anything else you want to send our watchers out with before we say goodbye?
My friends, keep it real, but if you can't keep it real, keep it virtual.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So thanks again, friends. You can find Jacob and myself both on Twitter out there. I'll put those handles up on the screen. Give us a follow. We both have YouTube channels as well. We'd love to help connect with you out there online. And of course, we really want to see you at the tech panel. So Jacob, I really appreciate it, man. I can't wait to see you next week for the tech panel.
I'll be there. See you then.
Awesome, buddy. See you in the cloud.